The day my sister told me I was getting nothing from my father's estate, she did it at his own kitchen table, with his coffee mug still sitting beside the sink. It was the green one with the hairline crack near the handle. My father, Arthur Hale, had refused to throw it away for 20 years because my mother had bought it at a church rummage sale for $1. The mug was ugly. He loved it. That was Arthur. He could keep a broken cup longer than most men kept a promise. Lydia had placed a folder in front of me as if she were serving papers. Her husband Paul stood behind her chair with his hands folded over his belt buckle. He had dressed for the occasion, dark suit, gray tie, polished shoes, the whole performance of respect. Lydia had not cried at the funeral, but she had dabbed under one eye whenever someone from town looked her way. She opened the folder and slid a photocopy across the table. "Dad was clear," she said. "The house, the store, the lake lots, all of it comes to me. You get the tools in the back shed and $10,000. More than fair, considering." I looked down at the page. I remember the smell of cold coffee. I remember the refrigerator humming too loudly because no one was talking. Outside, a blue jay hit the feeder and scattered seed across the snow. I said, "Considering what?" Lydia gave me a small smile, the kind she used when she wanted a room to know she had already won. "Considering you were never blood, Danny. Dad loved you in his way, but in the end he knew who the real Hale was." Paul looked at the floor when she said that, which told me he knew it was ugly. It did not tell me he disagreed. I was 58 years old. I had been Arthur's son since I was 9. Since the afternoon he knelt in the courthouse hallway and asked if I would mind taking his name. I had run Hale and Sons Hardware for 18 years while Lydia lived 3 counties away and called the town that place. I had changed my father's sheets during the last 6 months when his legs stopped obeying him. I could have said all of that. I almost did. Instead, I looked again at the paper she had pushed toward me. "The signature at the bottom," said Arthur T. Hale. It was close. Close enough for a bank clerk who had never watched my father write checks at the store counter. Close enough for a grieving family member who wanted paperwork to be cleaner than people. But the A in Arthur was wrong. My father made his capital A like a ladder, 2 straight sides and a low crossbar. This one was rounded at the top. I did not tell Lydia that. I said, "When did he sign this?" "March 3rd, Paul answered too fast. That was the first thing he should not have done. March 3rd was a Thursday. I knew because Arthur had been admitted to St. Agnes that morning after he fell in the bathroom and cut his ear on the tile. I had driven him there in my truck with a towel pressed to the side of his head. By 4 that afternoon, he was on morphine and talking to my mother as if she were standing at the foot of the bed. Dead 12 years, but apparently still wearing her yellow raincoat. I said, "He had a hard day on March 3rd. Lydia's fingers tightened on the folder. The lawyer said it was valid. Which lawyer? A local one. It doesn't matter. It mattered. The Hales had used Martin Greer since before I learned to drive. Martin's hearing aids whistled when he leaned too close, but Arthur trusted him. If my father had changed everything, he would not have called some local one whose name Lydia did not want to say. Paul cleared his throat. "Your sister wanted to do this privately so you wouldn't be embarrassed in front of people. That was generous of her, I suppose. A private disowning, family rate." Lydia pulled another sheet from the folder. "We've already spoken to the bank. The estate account will be moved this week. The realtor is coming Friday to look at the store building and the lots. Paul has a buyer interested. Clean, quick sale. No dragging this out because you have sentimental feelings about old shelves and paint cans." There it was. Not grief, a schedule. The store building sat on Maple Street, brick front, pressed tin ceiling. Old oak bins where my father still kept loose screws sorted in coffee cans. It was not beautiful to most people. To me, it was the place Arthur taught me that if a man came in short 12 cents for a furnace fuse in January, you wrote the 12 cents on a pad and forgot to collect it. Lydia saw the same building and saw downtown frontage. I asked, "What about the employees?" She blinked. "What employees?" "Ron, Teresa, Caleb on weekends. They'll find something. People always do. I nodded once. Ron had worked for us 31 years. Teresa knew every contractor in the county by voice. Caleb was 19 and saving for community college. Lydia did not know any of that. To her, they were loose ends. She slid a pen toward me, signed the acknowledgement. It just says you received a copy and won't interfere. I looked at the pen. It was one of my father's, from the hardware counter, Hale and Sons printed on the side in faded red. She must have taken a handful. I said, I'll have someone look at it. Her smile disappeared. Don't be difficult. Dad is gone. You don't get to play loyal son now. That one got through. I felt it behind my eyes, a pressure like I had stood up too fast. For a second I saw Arthur in his hospital bed, his hands thin on the blanket, asking me to check the back door twice because Lydia had been in his office alone. He had said that on February 19th. At the time I thought sickness had made him suspicious. Sitting at that table, with the wrong A on the paper and Lydia's realtor already scheduled, I began to wonder if sickness had simply made him honest, so I stood up. I put the pen back on the table. I did not raise my voice. I did not tell my sister what I had noticed. I did not tell Paul that March 3rd was going to be a problem for him. I only said, I'm sorry you chose to do it this way. Lydia laughed once, dry and sharp. There is no other way. You lost. I remember that sentence more clearly than I remember the funeral. You lost. As if my father had been a contest. As if a family could be scored on paper. When I stepped outside, the cold hit my face hard enough to make my eyes water. Lydia probably thought I was crying. I let her think it. What she did not know was that 2 months before he died, my father had asked me to drive him to Martin Greer's office on a Tuesday morning. He had told me it was about a property tax notice. That was not the whole truth. And what Paul did not know was that for 26 years, before I came back to run the store, I had worked in the county recorder's office. I knew what a real signature looked like. I knew what a recorded deed could prove. I knew that people who rush paperwork usually leave fingerprints where they think no one will look. I did not go home right away. My house was only 7 minutes from Arthur's place. I could have gone there, taken off my coat, and let the whole thing become what Lydia wanted it to be. A family disagreement, a hurt feeling, one more old story where everyone gets tired and no one becomes accountable. Instead, I drove to the store. Maple Street was quiet that afternoon. Our front window still had the hand-painted Christmas sale lettering Teresa had meant to remove in January. Arthur always said leaving decorations up too long made a business look lonely. I unlocked the side door and stood in the dark for a minute before I turned on the lights. The store smelled the way it always had. Cut keys, cardboard, dust, and the faint mineral smell from the bags of ice melt near the register. I went to Arthur's office in the back, a metal desk and 2 filing cabinets with a narrow window looking into the alley. He had taped a picture of my mother to the side of the computer monitor. His top drawer was locked. That was the second thing. Arthur never locked that drawer. He said a man who locked his desk in a town where everybody knew his truck was either hiding money or hiding shame, and he had no interest in either. I tried the little brass key on my ring. It did not fit. The lock had been changed. I stood there with the key in my hand and thought about February 19th. Arthur had been sitting in the recliner in his den, a blanket over his legs, watching a nature show with the sound too loud. Lydia had visited that morning. After she left, Arthur asked me to look in the office and see if the black ledger was still in the bottom drawer. Why? I asked him. Because your sister likes clean surfaces, he said. I thought he meant she had been tidying around a sick man because she could not fix anything that mattered. I found the ledger then. It was there. I told him so. He closed his eyes and said, "Good." Now the drawer was locked and the ledger was gone. I called a locksmith named Noreen Tate because in a town long enough, you know who will ask questions and who will wait. She arrived 20 minutes later, looked at the lock, looked at me and said, "This new? Looks that way. Your dad didn't do it. He used me for everything." She opened it in less than a minute. Inside were tax receipts, old warranty cards, a roll of peppermints, and an empty space where the ledger had been. The dust told on it. The black ledger mattered because Arthur did not trust computers for things he considered permanent. Every January, he wrote down the store's loans, the apartment rents, the lake lot taxes, and any promise he had made that he considered financial. It was not legally elegant. It was Arthur. I searched the office for an hour. I found no hidden will, no envelope marked in case of betrayal. What I found was a yellow sticky note stuck to the underside of the keyboard tray. MG2s, 9:30. Bring blue folder. Martin Greer. I sat down in Arthur's chair and looked at the note for a long time. The Tuesday had been January 24th. I knew because I had driven him. He told me the blue folder held old property tax assessments on the lake lots. He asked me to wait in the truck because Greer's office had stairs, and he did not want me making a production of helping him. I remembered being annoyed. I bought a coffee from the gas station and spilled some on my glove. Small things stay when the larger thing hides itself. The next morning I called Martin Greer's office at 8:30. His assistant, June, answered. "Danny," she said, softer than usual. "I'm sorry about Arthur. Thank you. I need to ask about a document Lydia says he signed on March 3rd. A will." There was a pause. Then Martin came on. "Do not sign anything your sister gives you," he said. "No greeting. No warm-up." That was when the air in my kitchen seemed to move away from me. I said, "So there is something. There is a great deal. Can you come in?" Greer's office was above a pharmacy, with stairs so narrow you turned sideways if someone came down while you went up. Martin was 81. His suit hung on him. His mind did not. He placed a folder on the desk. A real folder. Blue. "Your father came in January," he said. He was worried Lydia and Paul were trying to make him sign authority over the real estate. He did not want a family war while he was dying. He wanted something quieter. His word, not mine. Martin opened the folder and turned the first page toward me. Arthur created the Hale Continuity Trust, revocable while he lived, irrevocable at death, the store building, the apartment building, the lake lots, and his majority share in the store operating company were transferred into it on January 26th. Properly signed, properly notarized, recorded the next morning. I knew enough not to smile. Who's trustee? Arthur while living, you after death. Martin did not soften it. He said Lydia would sell everything inside 30 days if she could. He wanted the store held for at least 5 years, unless you decided there was no responsible way to keep it open. He wanted Ron and Teresa paid severance if it did close. He wanted the apartment rents used first for taxes and maintenance, not distributions. The will your sister showed you, even if valid, would only control what remained outside the trust. And what remained? Household furniture, his truck, personal accounts under the small estate limit, some tools. The tools in the back shed, $10,000. Lydia had thought she was throwing me scraps. She did not know she was holding the scraps herself. I asked Martin about March 3rd. He took off his glasses. Arthur could not have signed a competent will that day. He was hospitalized. I have the admission record because your father asked St. Agnes to release medical confirmation to me if needed. He expected something. That hurt more than Lydia's sentence. My father had expected something, and I had been too busy making soup, changing sheets, and pretending death made people kinder to see it clearly. Martin slid a second page toward me. This arrived by mail 2 weeks ago. A notice from the county recorder. Someone recorded a quitclaim deed transferring the lake lots from Arthur Hale to Lydia Hale Porter on March 4th. It should not have been possible because the lots were already in trust. But it was recorded against Arthur personally. The notary was Paul Porter's cousin. I read the name. Vanessa Porter Bell. I had seen her at the funeral in a red coat, standing by the guest book, telling people she did not really know Arthur, but family was family. Martin tapped the page. Your sister has been acting fast because speed makes people assume the road is clear. It is not clear, but we must be careful. If you accuse them too soon, they will become cautious. Let them make written claims. Let them put their hands on the wrong assets. Then we will have more than suspicion. I thought about Lydia's acknowledgement form, her realtor, the bank, the locked drawer. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. Martin leaned back. His chair creaked like an old porch. "Nothing dramatic. Get me copies of anything she sends. Do not threaten. Do not explain the trust. Do not tell her what you know about March 3rd. And find your father's black ledger if you can. He believed it would matter." That evening, Lydia texted me a picture of the acknowledgement form with a message under it. "Last chance to be decent. Sign by tomorrow or Paul will handle it." I typed 3 different replies and deleted all of them. Then I wrote, "I received your message. It was the dullest sentence I could manage. It was also the first honest move I made." For the next 9 days, Lydia believed I was sulking. I know that because she told people. Teresa heard it from a customer whose wife played cards with Lydia's mother-in-law. Small towns do not keep secrets. According to Lydia, I was being emotional. I was attached to junk. I could not accept that Arthur had made a practical decision. Paul told a contractor at the diner that I had lived off the store long enough, and it was time for real business people to step in. A contractor came in that afternoon, pretending to need hinge screws so he could tell me. I thanked him and sold him the screws. That was the hard part, not reacting. People think staying calm is natural if you are a calm man. It is not. It is work. It is going home with your jaw sore because you held it still all day. It is hearing your sister turn your father's death into a sales process and making yourself ask a customer whether he needs a receipt. Every night I made copies. Lydia sent emails with too many exclamation points and not enough caution. She sent me a proposed schedule for clearing the store. She sent a message saying Paul had spoken to a buyer and expected my cooperation during transition. She sent by mistake a draft letter to Ron and Teresa giving them 2 weeks' notice after sale closing. She recalled it 3 minutes later. I had already printed it. Paul sent less but gave more away. He wrote that the lake lots were no longer any of my concern because Lydia held title now. He wrote that the store inventory would be valued by his guy. He wrote, "Once, tell your old lawyer not to make this expensive." That was useful because I had never mentioned Martin. On the 4th day, a realtor named Bethany Cross came to the store with a measuring wheel. I had known Bethany since she wore braces. She said Lydia had authorized an evaluation. "Did she show you trustee authority?" I asked. Bethany stopped with the wheel halfway across aisle 3. She showed me the will. "A will is not authority over trust property." She looked at me for a moment. The apology left her face and was replaced by the professional fear of having stepped into a hole. "Should I leave?" she asked. "That would be best. Send me whatever Lydia gave you. For your records, I mean." She did. The will copy Lydia had given Bethany was cleaner than the one she showed me at the table. It had a notary stamp from Vanessa Porter Bell and 2 witness signatures. One witness was Paul's warehouse manager. The other was a woman named Elise Morton. I did not know Elise. Martin did. "She died in 2021, he said when I read the name over the phone. I was standing in the store bathroom because it was the only place with a locking door. Someone had scratched "Call Frank for a good time" into the paint before my father bought the building, and Arthur had refused to paint over it because he said Frank had probably suffered enough. "You are sure?" I asked. "I handled her estate. She has been in Maple Grove Cemetery for 2 years. For a while, neither of us spoke. A fake signature is one thing. A dead witness is another. It changes the smell of the room," Martin said. "Keep letting them talk." So I did. The black ledger turned up because of a snow shovel. Caleb was breaking down boxes in the back shed when he found it behind a stack of bent shovel handles Arthur had meant to repair. He came in holding it with both hands, like it was a bird that might wake up. "Mr. Hale? This yours?" No one but Caleb called me Mr. Hale. I told him Danny was fine at least once a week, and he ignored me. The ledger had a rubber band around it. Inside the front cover, Arthur had written my name. Not Daniel. Danny. Most of it was what I expected. Rents, taxes, store notes, insurance renewal dates. In the last 10 pages, the handwriting became slower, larger. He had started dating entries. January 12. Lydia asked again about power of attorney. Said Danny is too sentimental. Paul says estate tax will eat the property. Not true. MG says not true. January 19. Paul wanted me to sign blank bank forms. Told him I do not sign blank anything. He smiled at me like I am already dead. I had to stop there. The bell over the front door kept making its little tired ring. Life was continuing in the next room, stubborn and ordinary. I put one hand flat on the desk until I could read again. February 19. Lydia in office alone. Black ledger moved. Asked Danny to check. I hate putting him in this, but he is the only one who will do it clean. February 22. Signed trust. Told MG no drama. If Lydia behaves, she gets income as written. If she tries to steal or force sale, Danny has discretion to suspend distributions until accounting. MG says that clause is strong enough. The last entry was March 2. If she says blood, Danny, remember I chose you when I had nothing to gain. That is blood enough for me. I sat down because my knees had become unreliable. I did not cry then. That came later, while I was rinsing a spoon in my kitchen sink. Grief waits through the proper moments and catches you over silverware. I took the ledger to Martin the next morning. He read the last pages twice. Then he made copies, placed the original in a fireproof cabinet, and asked if I was ready for Lydia to know the road was not clear. I said, not yet. There was one more thing I wanted. Paul had written that Lydia held title to the lake lots now. If he believed that, he might have used it. At the recorder's office, 2 clerks still remembered me from the old days. The system was digital now, but the habits were the same. Names, dates, book numbers, grantor, grantee, property leaves tracks. The quitclaim deed to Lydia had been recorded March 4th at 10:16 a.m. The legal description was copied from an old tax bill and missed the easement language added in 2014. Attached to the same parcel record, filed 6 days later, was a mortgage notice from North Valley Bank. Lydia and Paul had pledged the lake lots for a bridge loan. I stared at the screen long enough that the clerk beside me asked if I was all right. I'm fine, I said. It was not fine for them, because the lake lots were trust property, because the deed they used to get title was signed by a man who was in a hospital bed, medicated, and no longer owned the lots personally, because their notary was family, because one witness on the will had been dead for 2 years, and because North Valley Bank did not enjoy being lied to. Martin sent the first letter that afternoon, not to Lydia, to the bank. He enclosed the recorded trust transfer, the hospital confirmation, the ledger excerpts, and a quiet statement that the trust disputed any pledge or lien based on Lydia's alleged personal title. He copied the title insurer and the realtor's broker. He did not copy my sister. 2 days later, Lydia called me 19 times before lunch. I did not answer until the 20th. She did not say hello. What did you do? I was in aisle 5 restocking furnace filters. The cardboard edges had dried my hands out. I remember that because I looked at the little cracks across my knuckles while she breathed into the phone. I said, "You need to be more specific. The bank froze our loan. Bethany says her broker won't touch the store." Paul is furious. I pulled another filter from the box and slid it into place. "That sounds like something to discuss with your attorney. Don't you dare act like this is business. This is Dad's estate." For the first time in that whole mess, I almost lost my temper. Then I thought of Arthur's note. Do it clean. So I said, yes, it is. The meeting happened on a rainy Tuesday in April, in a conference room at North Valley Bank that smelled like carpet cleaner and burnt coffee. Arthur had once told me banks respected paper they could touch. This time the table held more paper than anyone wanted. Lydia sat across from me in a cream coat, pearls at her throat, face pale under makeup. Paul sat beside her with a legal pad and no lawyer, which told me either arrogance had survived or money had become a problem. Martin sat to my right. Alan Cho from the bank sat at the head of the table. A woman from the title insurer sat beside him. Alan began politely. Bank people are trained to sound polite while they lock doors. We are here to clarify authority and title concerning the lake parcels and related estate assets, he said. Paul jumped in before anyone else could breathe. There is nothing to clarify. My wife is Arthur Hale's biological daughter and sole heir under the updated will. Daniel is contesting because he doesn't like the result. I looked at Lydia when he said Daniel. She had always called me Danny when she wanted something, and Daniel when she wanted distance. Martin opened his folder. The will Mr. Porter refers to is, at best, irrelevant to the assets in question. At worst, it is evidence. Paul snorted. Evidence of what? Martin placed the trust certificate on the table first. January 26th, Arthur T. Hale, settler and initial trustee. Daniel Hale, successor trustee upon death. The store building, apartments, lake parcels, and controlling share of Hale and Sons had all moved into the trust before the alleged will was signed. Alan read without expression. The title insurance woman made notes. Lydia stared at the page. Dad never told me about that, she said. Martin looked at her over his glasses. That appears to have been intentional. Martin placed the hospital letter next. March 3rd. Admission at 9:42 a.m. Pain medication through the afternoon. Attending physician's note. Confused, disoriented to date, intermittent hallucination. Beside it, he placed the alleged will and quitclaim, both notarized by Vanessa Porter Bell. Paul's face had started to shine. Lots of people sign things in hospitals, he said. They do, Martin said. Usually not deeds to property they no longer own, witnessed by a woman who had been deceased for 2 years. The room became so quiet I could hear rain hitting the window. Lydia turned slowly toward Paul. That was when I understood she had not known about Elise Morton. Maybe she knew the papers were dirty in the way people know and try not to look, but she had not known Paul or Vanessa had used a dead woman's name. Paul said, That's a clerical issue. The title insurance woman looked up. No, Mr. Porter, it is not. He had walked into that room expecting a family argument and found professionals using complete sentences. Martin took out Lydia's emails, Paul's messages, the realtor packet, the recalled termination letter, the bridge loan documents, and the trust clause Arthur had insisted on. If a beneficiary tried to force sale or encumber trust property through fraud or bad faith claim, the trustee could suspend distributions pending full accounting. Arthur had not used many fancy words in life. He had hired a man who knew them. Alan folded his hands. North Valley will treat the bridge loan collateral as disputed and potentially invalid. Mr. and Mrs. Porter, you will receive formal notice, but you should expect immediate review of the loan file. If material misrepresentation occurred, the bank may accelerate the note. Lydia whispered, Accelerate means what? Paul did not answer. Martin did. It means they may demand repayment now. She looked smaller then. Not innocent. Smaller. There is a difference. The broker withdrew from any listing connected to the store or lake parcels until title authority was resolved. The title insurance woman said no policy would be issued. Alan said the bank would refer the notary issue to counsel. He did not say police. He did not need to. Lydia finally looked at me. Danny, she said. There it was, the old name, pulled down from a shelf because the room had turned against her. I thought of being 12 and watching her teach me how to skip stones at the lake. Good memories do not disappear just because they become inconvenient. Can we talk alone? She asked. I shook my head. We did that at Dad's table. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. Paul pushed his chair back. This is extortion. He wants everything. I spoke then, because until that moment Martin had done most of it, and because I wanted Paul to hear my voice at least once. I wanted my father buried without you turning his house into a closing office. I wanted Ron and Teresa not to find out from a recalled email that their jobs meant nothing to you. I wanted my sister to sit across from me and tell the truth, even if the truth was ugly. You gave me paperwork instead, so now paperwork can answer. The room held it. Martin slid the final page across the table. Lydia and Paul would withdraw all claims under the alleged will and quitclaim, account for documents removed from Arthur's office, and repay legal costs caused by the filings. Lydia's trust distribution would be suspended for 1 year, then reviewed if she cooperated. If they refused, the trust would file suit and refer the documents for investigation. Lydia read it, lips moving slightly. 1 year, she said. Martin answered, Your father allowed discretion for longer. Daniel chose 1 year. She looked at me again, and this time there was something like confusion in her face. She had prepared for me to be weak or vengeful. She had not prepared for restraint. Paul told her not to sign. Then Alan said the bank's review would proceed regardless of whether she signed. The title woman said the same. Bethany's broker said nothing, which was wise. Lydia signed. Her signature looked like Arthur's in one way. The pressure deepened at the end. I noticed that and hated myself a little for noticing. Paul did not sign until Martin reminded him that his messages and loan documents carried his name whether his consent appeared on our paper or not. Then he signed so hard the pen tore the bottom sheet. No one shouted. No one confessed. The justice people imagine is louder than the justice that usually changes a life. Most consequences arrive by mail, a frozen loan, a denied title policy, a lawyer's invoice. By summer, Lydia and Paul had sold their renovated house before the renovation was finished. The bridge loan came due after review. Vanessa Porter Bell lost her notary commission. The alleged will was withdrawn. The quitclaim was corrected. The lake lot stayed in the trust. Lydia did not speak to me for 7 months. The first time she called, I was in Arthur's office, which had become mine, though I still thought of it as his. She said Paul had moved out. She said she was not calling for money. Then she said nothing for long enough that I thought the line had dropped. I did know he was sick, she said at last. I told myself he understood enough. I looked at the photograph of my mother beside the monitor, the tomato plant, the laughing. That is between you and Dad, I said. Dad is dead. I know, she cried then. I listened. I did not comfort her the way I might have years earlier. That part of me had been used up at the kitchen table. When she said blood like a weapon and slid a false will across our father's wood. After the 1-year suspension ended, I restored a limited distribution because the trust allowed it and because Arthur had not written her out. He had only stopped her from taking more than love and law permitted. That distinction mattered to him. The store is still open. Ron retired in October with a party he claimed he did not want and then stayed at for 4 hours. Teresa runs purchasing now. Caleb finished his first year of community college and still calls me Mr. Hale when he wants to annoy me. I kept Arthur's green mug. It sits on the shelf above the desk, cracked handle turned toward the wall. I do not drink from it. Some afternoons, when the store is quiet and the sun comes through the front windows, I can still hear my father's pencil moving across the ledger. His belief that promises should be written down because memory gets convenient when money enters the room. Lydia once told me I had lost. She was wrong, but not in the way she thought. I did not win the estate. That was never the thing, though it took me a while to say that without lying. I kept what my father had tried to protect. The store, the people tied to it, the proof that choosing a son can be as real as making one. If a story where the quiet one wins is what you came for, Cold Inheritance has more. And tell me this because I still ask myself sometimes, was I right to let Lydia walk into that conference room before I showed her the trust? Or should I have warned her when she first sat at our father's table and smiled?